All right, guys, welcome back to the B&B Professional. This is your host, Kevin Bryant Ramirez, and we are doing an installment of the interview series. I've been trying to do this interview forever, it seems. We have a special guest on the podcast today. Her name is Vanessa Sperduto. She is a co-founder of Easy Breezy B&B. She's actually a co-founder with Sean Howell, who I had on the show previously. They own and manage Airbnbs in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. They have 13 units, currently right now in their portfolio, and I'm very excited to and honored to call her my friend. We've become good friends recently, and I respect them a lot. I look up to them. Everything that they're doing is really cool. So I definitely wanted to have both of you on the podcast. So welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you. I don't know why I'm so nervous. I feel like I'm talking to a real life celebrity, Kev.
Oh man, no, thank you. No, I'm humbled. Yeah, no, I'm a little nervous myself as well. I always get nervous with these, and I actually haven't done an interview in a while. So, today I was like, man, have this interview. I've been thinking about it all day. So, I'm excited that you're here.
Yeah, me too, for sure. I've been wanting to get on this podcast for a while, so I'm happy to finally be here.
Yeah, all right. It's party time, girl. So tell us a little bit about your story. Let's get started there. Like how'd you get into Airbnb, and how'd you get started? How did you get to where you are now?
Okay, cool. So, I was a flight attendant before I started on Airbnb. And right before COVID hit, Sean, my partner, my boyfriend too, him and I decided to move in together, and he purchased the duplex in Fort Lauderdale. We were living on one side, and he was renting out the other side to a long-term tenant. COVID hit. And that was a huge hit for me at my job as a flight attendant because flying completely stopped. So I was super bored. I went from pretty much being gone all month long working to just being home twiddling my thumbs, so bored, driving Sean insane. Right around that same time, the tenant next door had moved out. So I was like, oh my God, babe, please let me do Airbnb. Like, let's just give it a shot. Like, I'll do the whole thing. I'll set everything up. Like, I'll manage it. I'll do the cleanings. I promise you won't have to deal with any of the headache. And he was like super duper apprehensive about it at first. And he was like, no, it's not going to be worth it. I'm not going to make that much extra money. And we had a really good friend of ours, Monica and Matthew, who they run an awesome meetup called Landlords and Loggers. They were doing it already. They had like 3 units at the time. So I was like, all right, let's go talk to Matt and Monica, see what they say. If they think it's a good idea, like, let's just give it a shot. And I was like, worst case scenario, you could just put a long-term tenant back in if it doesn't work out. So we sat down with Matthew and Monica, and like before I even got the entire sentence out, like, should we do Airbnb? They're like, absolutely do it. Like, do it. It's going to be a great experience, like, blah, blah, blah. So Sean really, really respects Matt. So he was like, all right, if Matt says it's a good idea, like, I'll let you give it a try. The first month, granted, we did launch in high season, but our first month out the door, Sean pretty much doubled what he would have made with a long-term tenant. And that just, it was nuts, dude. Wow. And that kind of just like got progressively better. So we're like, okay, how do we turn this into like a real thing? Like, how do we scale? How do we make a proper property management company without having to rely on us being able to buy property to scale? So that's kind of how this all came about.
Nice. Nice. I'm glad you said that. Like, that I don't have to rely on buying, because that's kind of what this podcast is about. Like, we talk. My audience is basically Airbnb hosts that have 1 to 3 units. So most of them either buy it or they're arbitraging, and they're like, how can I get the next one, right? So one of the important things that I always say is like, hey, like, you start with management. Management
is
less risk, right?
It's the way to go, especially like you said, less
Yeah.
risk, rental arbitrage. I mean, you guys know you used to do that, right? Like you're putting out a lot of
Yes.
cash up front, right? So the management
Mm-hmm.
route is just a lot easier. It's a really low barrier entry point.
Right.
I will say your first property is probably going to be difficult to get under management if you don't have any like clout to show. You know what I mean? Because now you're asking somebody
Right.
to trust you blindly with their property. But once you get over that hump,
Yeah.
smooth sailings from there.
That's it. Smooth sailing. Yeah, yeah. That's the biggest obstacle for my listeners and for my students even, because I don't know if you know, I've told Sean, but I've taken on a few mentorships,
Oh,
and
awesome.
yeah, yeah, it's really exciting. But two of my students, they have no experience in Airbnb, and I'm like, I'm trying to solve that so give them a solution, because I'm like, how do you get started in management without any experience? I'm like, ugh. If I could
Honestly,
solve that, maybe that. Yeah, if I could solve that, maybe it's $1 million solution. But
it really is, because even like a friend of mine asked me to speak to her son who wanted to get involved in it, and he has no properties, and I'm like, okay, like how do I really give him a genuine like plan that's going to
mm-hmm.
really help him be able to do this with zero experience under his belt? Like, you know what I mean? It's
Right,
tough for sure.
right, right,
For
right.
sure.
So okay, so you guys got started with the duplex, and then so you did one unit first, right? Or
Right.
was
So we
it
did one unit.
both? Okay.
We did the one side first. As soon as
Okay.
I saw how good that was going, I was like trying so hard to get Sean to agree to like move out and put the
Yeah.
other unit up. But like at that
Do
point,
it.
right, I wanted to so bad, but he was like, dude, this one unit that's up is paying the mortgage and some. Like, I don't want to have to.
Yeah.
It was the whole it's not going to be worth it thing again. It was as if like what was happening next door was not enough yet, you know? So he was like, how about this? I'll help you. Because at that time, it was really just me doing it. He was kind of just like supporting, right? And he was like, okay, how about this? I'll help you find and like push to find the next client. Like, let's see if we can help you get other people to let you manage their properties, or do the rental arbitrage route, which he was not a big fan of. And to be honest, at that time, I was just too inexperienced to know any different. I was just excited to get my next unit, right? So I was like calling everybody I could find. Like I was like on Facebook Marketplace, calling every apartment for rent, trying to use the whole like corporate lease thing. None of it worked. And then Sean and I were like, all right, let's just make our website and like hit the ground running with like Google ads and stuff like that. So we gave that a shot, and one day we got a phone call from this random guy, and he's like, hey, I'm looking for a manager for my property in Wilton Manors, blah, 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 asked us all of these questions. And he's like, can you guys come check it out? And I'm like, yeah, I actually live right up the street. I can come by right now if you'd like. And me and Sean literally went over there, like within minutes of hanging up the phone with him. And honestly, I think the fact that we were just like there right away sold the deal, because he literally signed the contract that day. And I remember leaving
Awesome.
Yes, and mind you, it was like this beautiful property in Wilton Manors, a huge waterfront property, like really like the cream of the crop. So I remember leaving his house, and he walked us out, and I get in the car, and he's still standing outside. So I'm like trying to play it cool, but like the second we cut the corner, I'm like, yay! I was like screaming at the top of my lungs. I'm like, we did it! I was so excited.
Oh man, that is exciting. That is exciting. And I've actually gotten a couple like that too. That they're like, I'm doing something, I'm in the middle of something, and I just there's like I pick up the phone and like, hey, I need a manager, whatnot, and we talk about it. I give them the whole spiel. They're like, can you come right now? I'm like, yes, I'll be there right now. So
2 seconds.
That's that's always exciting. And now like to get into the rest of the interview, because you have some skills that are pretty unique, and I think you guys, like you and Sean, work really really well together. I also I'm with my wife Natalia. We're a duo as well, a couple duo, and so we kind of have to play off each other's skills and each other's strengths, right? So talk about like your role in your company, and like what are your strengths, and what is it that your role is for the company to to help you guys move forward, like with you, between you and Sean and everybody else on your team? Like
For
what is it that you
sure.
do for the team?
So originally when this all started out, I was definitely more on the like operations side, which I still am on operations side. So that means while Sean was handling all the tech stuff, the pricing algorithms, the trigger words in our listing, all that good stuff, fixing
Yeah.
our website, I was doing cleaning management, you know what I mean, guest relations, guest troubleshooting. If there's any maintenance issues, I'm the one showing up.
Right.
But so as we started growing, right? So Sean decided we could move out and put the second unit up. I decorated that as well. And I started getting like a
Mm,
lot of really great reviews just based off like how I was decorating the houses. And, you know, we were listing top page search ranks and like we were just getting a lot of traction. And we started noticing that like our clients would come to us and they would see these listings and they'd be like, well, who did that one? Like that one looks really good. Like I want that person to do it.
yeah.
And I also started realizing how important those pictures are on Airbnb. Like that
Right.
5 seconds that you have for that potential guest scrolling through, you've literally got maybe 5 seconds to catch their attention before they're scrolling past you and on to the next listing.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I got really good at just making these like insane layouts that just were so eye popping and like just caught your eye immediately that Sean was like, all right, we really got to like gear us more towards your designs being our brand because like it's selling. Like we've had clients come on, like I said, and literally just want me to do these decors, right? So now my role has really kind of, while I do still manage operations, my role has kind of shifted to like creating this brand, right? So now I go into the homes, I stage them before the photographer gets there. I make sure that he's taking pictures in certain angles, you know what I mean? I'm making sure that he's
Right.
editing the pictures that in a way that I want them to be edited. And after that, when I'm putting the pictures up, you know, like I'm making sure that they're in a very specific order. I'm taking that future potential guest on a very detailed, thought out tour of this property via the pictures that they're seeing on Airbnb. I'm making sure that that picture that comes up is so eye catching they cannot help but to click it before they scroll past. So I've
Nice.
definitely shifted now into to like that more so into like the branding
Okay.
side and just kind
Okay.
of like selling us in that way because honestly, you got to stand out on Airbnb. Like, especially in this
Right.
market in Fort Lauderdale, this is, I
Yeah.
always tell people it's not amateur hour anymore. It's no
Mm-hmm.
longer a mom and pop can just throw up their extra bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
No, like, this is a professional field now, and you've got to be
Right.
top notch. You know what I mean? To stay in the
Yeah.
game.
I love it. I love
For
it. I
sure.
love it. I love it that
Yeah.
you're talking about this. I've been talking about this for a while too. Design is becoming so much more important. Before you can just put like anything up on online
No
and make
more.
yeah, make a shit ton of money, and now you can't. So now I know we're gonna get into like because the operation side of stuff, like you have a lot of experience in that, and I still want to talk about that. But since you brought up the eye catching listings, how what is some advice as far as like making it pop, doing the design and all that stuff, some advice of somebody who's starting out, doesn't never really set up a property. What kind of things can you recommend to them as far as either interior design or maybe even your process of like what's your thought process of starting something, a blank canvas, and you're like, okay, well, how do I set this thing up?
For sure. So, one of the things I always tell my clients off bat is you want to create what I like to call Instagrammable spaces. So, those are going to be
Mm.
like the spaces, like you ever go to like a dope restaurant and it just looks so cool and you're just like, I gotta Instagram this and show everybody where I'm at right now.
Yes.
I
Yes.
my goal is to create that space in the vacation rental, right? Nobody wants to go on vacation and feel like they're in their grandma's house or they're in their mom's extra bedroom. Like they want to go on vacation and feel like they're on vacation, like they're not in their own home. So if
Right.
what you're designing for your property is something that you would do in your home that you live every day, it's not
Yeah.
what you want to do. I always say you've got to do a design that is so loud and obnoxious that
Yeah.
you would never consider it in your own house because you're not at home. You're on vacation. Vacation should be loud and obnoxious and fun. You know what I mean?
Nice.
It should
Nice.
feel like you're taken out of that like day-to-day space that is like your home. So that's my
Yeah.
first piece of advice. Number one, definitely Instagrammable spaces, loud, obnoxious things that you're not going to do in your own house. The other piece of that is I'm super big on functionality.
Okay.
So I know we did want to talk about that a little bit later, but it
Yeah.
is
No. No.
really
Go ahead.
important to me that the functionality of the space is good, not just for the guests themselves, but for the cleaning crew that's coming in after. So on the guest facing side, right, I
Okay.
want to imagine I'm the guest, I'm walking into the property, I have all this luggage in my hands, you know what I mean? I'm probably tired, I've just traveled all day.
Right.
Where's the light switch? How do I turn the light on in this house if I came in late at night? You know what I mean? Is it easily
Right.
found? Is it labeled? Is it right there where I can see it? Now I get in my room. I have this dirty luggage that I just carried around the airport all day. I don't want to put it on my bed. Where do I set my luggage up? So you're
Right.
always going to find things like luggage racks in my properties, or you'll find like a bench in the bedroom to put the luggage on, things like that.
Right.
Can I open this closet door without banging the door into the bed? Does this space accommodate the furniture that I'm putting in here? Just little things like that on the guest facing side. But
Right.
then on the cleaner facing side, cleaning is half of the battle. Not actually, cleaning is like 75% of the battle in Airbnb. You could
Right.
have the dopest, most Instagrammable space on planet Earth and everybody agrees, but if that space is not clean, it might as well be your grandma's house on Airbnb. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's got to be clean. And when
Yeah.
I say clean, I mean the whole house could, I mean, the whole house
Yes.
could be spotless. Let them find one hair under a pillow or on a bed and it's game
Right.
over. So in my head, I'm like, okay, and because I've cleaned, I know what some of the challenges are. I want my cleaners to be able to vacuum every corner of that house, no matter if there's furniture there or not. So in my mind, I'm only picking furniture that's elevated off the ground, so that way that vacuum can get under everywhere without them having to move big, heavy furniture around. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm also not going to put I'm not going to put like a dresser that has a ton of drawers, because what's going to happen is now guests are going to leave things in those drawers. They're going to call me and now I'm going to have to go wait in line at UPS to send them their $10 sweater back and stand in line for an hour.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Just
Yes.
like
It
little
happens.
things like that.
Yes.
No, it happens all the time.
All the time.
Or I'm not going to buy a white cloth couch. You know what I mean? I know that that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Okay.
And my rugs, for example, I'm only getting like washable rugs. So that way, if there is a stain, my cleaners can just pop that bad boy in the washer. Just things like that. I want my team to be able to hit 3 or 4 cleanings in a day. You know what I mean? And if they're having to struggle cleaning these spaces, that's never going to happen.
Yeah. 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 That's something that I've seen. I've managed listings sometimes that they have like so many things in the property, like just and the host doesn't realize how harder it makes for the cleaners. Like sometimes my cleaners go into a new unit, and they're like, Kevin, this has like, just every little decoration, like hundreds and hundreds of little decorations that they have to like pick up and
move
knickknacks and
around,
stuff.
right?
Right. I'm like, and they're like, I don't know if I can clean this like in the amount of time that you want me to clean, because there's so much. So I think
and sometimes that's
yeah.
an uncomfortable conversation that you have to now have with the owner. Like, hey, I know you put your heart and soul into decorating this property, but unfortunately, we're gonna it's just not functional for what we're trying to do.
Right. So yeah, so I love that you talked about the eye-catching listings. Like that's something that more people need to learn about, especially those getting started out. Because like one of the things that's just gonna up your bookings. You know what I'm saying? So like, if you're just getting started out, guys, and you're listening to Vanessa, like really listen to what Vanessa's saying here, because that's gonna increase your bookings for sure. If you can, number one, get that that eye-catching listing, and number two, the functionality of it. So now you have those great reviews from the cleaning and all that stuff. So it can increase that occupancy rate and increase the reviews.
Oh, and one more tip for you rookies: when you're doing your first listing, please, please, please hire a photographer, and do not hire one of the Airbnb photographers that they will recommend to you. Hire a photographer that you can see their portfolio and what they've done. And also, please tuck in your sheets. Please make sure that your bed has a night. Like, you'll never look at a hotel photo and have a bed that does not have sheets that are tucked and smooth and even. Tuck those bad boys in. Make that guest feel like there's no way anybody else could have laid in that bed before they did, because it was just so nice and neatly tucked and crisp.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Now, now, yeah, that's really good advice. Now, as far as like the operations side, all right, because I really wanted to get you on the show too to speak about like, I think it's becoming tougher to kind of satisfy the guests, I would say, or kind of like there's more guests that are becoming more and more versed with how
Needy.
Airbnb works, right? And they're becoming so then they start to become needy because they're like, I know how to play this system, right? So us as hosts, we have to kind of make sure that we are number one versed on the policies, and then also prevent certain things like parties, right? Like, what do you guys do for parties
Right.
as far as like preventing the parties and all that stuff? And you guys have any issues with parties at all?
So, I mean, we've definitely had a few things that have happened that slipped by us, but we do learn from it every time and put things into place to not allow it to happen again. So one of the things that we are so adamant about is having a camera on the property. And we're so adamant to the point that that's something we offer our clients free of charge. We supply the property with a camera because we know how important that is. Not only is that important for party prevention, because now I can literally see every person that's walking in that door.
Right.
It's also really good when you're battling with a guest for something that they're saying isn't right. Okay, let me
Yeah.
backtrack. So Airbnb, their rules and policies, I definitely suggest that everybody takes a second to kind of like read through them and learn about them. They basically tell you that any rules or regulations that you have listed clearly for the guest to see prior to
Right.
arrival or prior to them booking, are enforceable by you, and Airbnb will back you up on that.
Mm.
So what I've done is I've kind of laced in a set of like rules and regulations that they're not necessarily the biggest deal if a guest
Right.
breaks, but they're things that guests break all the time. And now I can say, hey, Airbnb, like, yeah, this guest is like trying to complain that, we shut their party down. Well,
Yeah.
any complaint pretty much that comes
Yeah.
in, I'm able to just kind of get it shut down, because I'm like, hey, my house rules say that only 4 people are allowed. I have it on my Ring camera that there were actually 5 people that showed up.
Mm.
So while am I going to give you a hassle that 5 people showed up if you're being respectful? No. But if you want to come back and try to get me and say like, oh, the AC went out, so I want a full refund because for 20 minutes it wasn't working, or whatever it might be that's silly,
Right.
and because they're trying to scam you out of
Right.
money, I have so many little things in place that the guest has already broken that they don't even realize that Ring camera like shows
Right.
me. Or like if it's after 10 p.m. and I hear noise on that Ring
Yeah.
camera, I'm logging that video, because I have it in my house rules that after 10 p.m. there should be no noise heard outside the building, and that's a city ordinance.
Wow. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. 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 Definitely.
So while I'm not going to necessarily be like nitpicky with the guests that, oh, I can hear it, like just for no reason, no. But if now the guest tries to scam me, or the guest damages my property in some way, shape, or form, I've got this insurance policy set and ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And where do you put those rules and those policies in the? I know in the Airbnb listing they have a certain section like you put it. Where is it that you put it exactly in the listing?
I put it in my house. I put it in my house
The
rules. In my
additional
house
rules, right? Okay.
Additional rules. So like a couple of the things that I put in there, just to give you guys like a little, what do they call it? A nugget, a
A
golden
golden
nugget,
nugget.
whatever.
Yeah.
So one of the huge things that I put in that is I do collect all guest IDs, regardless of whether or not the guest is verified via Airbnb. And if that guest does not send me their guest ID within 72 hours of booking, I have the right to completely terminate the reservation without a refund. But that's just more so because I want to know who's staying in my
Right.
property. And Airbnb is never going to release that information to you unless you get a subpoena from the court of law. And I'm not comfortable with that.
Right.
But that's a great one because it gets me out of being able to cancel a booking if the guest does refuse to send their ID. Hey, it was in my house rules.
Right.
Another one, like I told you, is I have that super strict no more than 2 guests outside of those listed on my guest list can stay. So even if the house has a max occupancy of, let's say, 8 people, if I have 4 people on that reservation list, that means there can never be more than 6 people on site without it breaking my house rules. So if there's 8 people, even though my home can handle 8 people,
Right.
you already broke my house rules because you didn't tell me how many people were staying in my home. Again, I'm not going to be super nitpicky about that unless there is something going on,
Right.
but it's just these like little ways to lace in protection for yourself as a host.
Yeah.
So that Ring camera is huge on that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that it's like you're not nitpicky about it, because I think, especially people who just get started on Airbnb, like they think it's supposed to run, like everything's supposed to run smoothly, like especially like exactly how you think it's gonna be in your mind, but then there's a lot of things that you kind of have to give way towards, and it like if they're being respectful, why are you gonna be hassling them basically when they're just trying to enjoy it, right?
I'm not going to do that.
Right. But your policies here, it's great because you can actually, kind of cover your ass if anything happens. Then you say, okay, well, I have this on my rules, and
and this rule was broken.
Right. If you want to be, if you want to be difficult, Mr. Guest, then hey, I got all these rules here that you've broken, and basically like, hey, like, either I cancel you, you get out, or whatever. Have you ever had to have like any have you ever had to like kick anybody out, and why?
Right. I have, and that's kind of where that ID situation came about. So we had a guest one time that booked last minute. I don't know why I felt suspicious about it. So I always say trust your gut.
Yeah.
I felt suspicious about it. We also use the Ring camera as a form to verify that it is the guest checking in that it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So long story short, I always check the camera at check-in time just to make sure it's the guest that it's supposed to be, all that good stuff. This guest didn't check in until like after midnight, so I was already unconscious. At 7 a.m., I'm like, all right, let me just check, make sure everything's good. My camera's offline. So I'm like, wait a minute. Like,
What?
and at that time, the front door switch could control the power that went to the camera. So they basically turned it off, even though we had a huge sign that said, don't turn it off, which we since hardwired that camera.
Good.
So now there's no opportunity for them to do that. Well, long story short, I show up at the property. I called the guest a million times. They didn't answer. I called Airbnb, and I'm just like, that's another thing. You got to be the first one to contact Airbnb because it actually makes a really big difference. So what I did was I called Airbnb, and I'm like, hey, guys, I'm on my way to the property. My Ring camera went off. In the last video I had seen, it was like 6 people coming into the house. And then additionally, my smart lock showed me that my front door had opened like 30-something times between midnight and 6 a.m.
Wow.
So I tell Airbnb all of that. I let them know I'm on my way there to go check it out. I get to the property. There's bottles of alcohol in the parking lot. The window has alcohol littered all over. I knock on the door. This guy is butt booty naked.
What?
Like in my towel.
God.
They had delivered. Dude, it was insane. He's butt booty naked. There's like 8 people on air mattresses passed out in the living room. There's a dog that had just given birth to like a whole litter of puppies on my brand new washable rug, mind you.
Kidding me? Oh my God.
Dude, I honestly, like, it sounds funny now that it's over, but I was so upset.
I bet.
So I was like, dude, you gotta go, right? So long story short, it got very combative. He was like screaming and yelling at me, cussing me out, like in my face, telling me he was gonna whoop my behind, blah, blah, blah. But mind you, the identity was verified on Airbnb, right? So Sean hears me because I have him on the phone. He's like, call the cops, this isn't safe, just call the cops. So I'm like, okay. So now when they see me calling the cops is when they start to get out, right? Of course, the cops show up 2 seconds after the guest leaves. And that's when I found out that had that guest attacked me, there's no way for me to get the identity of the guest unless I file a subpoena from the court of law. Like, literally, that guest could have beat me down and left me there to die.
Wow.
The cops could show up and they would literally have to go through this entire process before Airbnb would release that information to
Wow.
them. And to me, that sounded absolutely insane.
Right.
Like, there's moms renting rooms out in their
Right.
home and they're trusting this identity verified badge, and it means absolutely nothing to you as a host.
Wow.
So please, 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 please put it in your guest listing, put it in all your listings. We do require that you send your ID to the host after
Right.
booking, and it must be sent before check-in. And if a guest ever gives you kickback about it, I always explain to them why we do it, and 99% of the time, they're super chill about it. They send the ID over, and if they don't, no problem. We just cancel the booking.
Right. Right. And at that point, do you return the money back, or you're just keeping the money if they've already paid?
Well, what,
Like if they decide not to give you an ID. Right?
oh, well, no, it depends how long it is. So
Okay.
our team is really good about, as soon as the booking comes in, we remind them that they need to send us the
Okay.
ID. The only time I would not return the money is if it was like 72 hours outside of the booking. Well, that's not fair. If they just book and they're booking 3 days out, I'm gonna give them their
Right.
money back if it's
Right.
right away. But like, if you booked 3 months ago and my team has been messaging you to get that ID, and now it's 72 hours before, and you want to argue this with me, no, I'm not giving you your money back, because now I'm not getting that
Right.
rebooked. I'm not losing that income because you didn't follow
Right.
directions.
Right. Right. Yeah. Now, as far as like collecting the IDs and stuff, like number one, like do you do it directly on the app on Airbnb, and also do you do any type of agreement with them, like that they have to sign, or just the ID?
Nope. No agreement that they have to sign. We just ask that they send the ID, and it has to be the ID of the person that was that made the reservation, and additionally, that person has to be the one that's checking in. So, if they're booking for a group of them and they're not going to be the first person getting there, we do ask that they send us the ID of somebody that is checking in, because again, I need to know who's in that house.
Yeah.
Like, I need to at least be able to give a cop one person's ID that is physically here in this space.
Right. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. And they're sending the ID like straight on the app, right? They just a message.
Straight. Most of the time it's through Airbnb. Sometimes the guest will just like have already like booked and then message me like directly, which I don't mind if they send it via text message. However they want to send it, all good, as long as we get that ID.
Gotcha. Let's go into like Airbnb claims. As far as like doing claims, I know you have like your certain way of doing claims and stuff like that. What type of advice do you have for somebody starting out and like, you know, to get their money back, you know, for these claims? And do you have a certain way of doing them?
I do. So it's honestly, it's a whole process that starts from the beginning of, you know, the day they check in to the day they check out. So it starts with my cleaning team. When my cleaners go in there to clean the property, they take an entire video of how the property was left upon checkout. And once they finish cleaning, they take an entire video of how the property was left once they finish cleaning. And what that allows me to do is, if the guest says that when they arrive to the property, X, Y, and Z was not cleaned properly, I can say, okay, let me check my video. And it's a thorough video. To be honest, it's usually, depending on the size of the property, will take 3 to 5 minutes, but I cannot express how invaluable that video is going to be to you, and how many times it got us out of guests trying to scam us, like for a discount or whatever. So that video is timestamped. If you take a video on your iPhone, it's timestamped. So we basically take a video of the entire property. And it's actually worked. Like, I've had a guest who like literally dirtied the home themselves and was like, oh, this is how it looked when we got here. And I'm like, well, no, I have the camera from my cleaner who was the last person that got in, and none of that was there. And they're like, oh, well, somebody must have broken in then. And I said, well, no, because I have my Ring camera security system that covers the perimeter, and I can show you that after the cleaner left, you know what I mean, nobody else was on the perimeter of the property till you guys arrived. And that literally got me out of a guest that was trying to get a full refund on like a $3,000 booking. Just that video.
Wow.
Yeah. And then again, on the back end of that, taking the video after they check out, that's huge as well, because that's also a time-stamped video. So if they throw a party or they ruin my sheets, or they just leave the place in a completely disrespectful condition, like, you cannot argue with this video. Like, here it is, it's here, you
Right.
can't argue with it, right? And then
Here it is. It's
additionally,
time stamped. It's
it's
everything. Yeah.
time stamped, there's nothing. And then additionally, like, even further than that, I'm going to take a detailed picture of every single item that I'm making that claim for and submit that as an individual piece of evidence on Airbnb's platform. And it really helps, because there's no arguing with it. And it's also super important that your property always looks like your listing photos, because, like, for example, I had to change out all the curtains in a property because somebody smoked cigarettes. This house has the huge floor-to-ceiling windows. The curtains for that property, dude, they're so expensive because I have to cover every window. I was able to pull up the receipt where the curtains were purchased to show I paid this amount of money for these curtains, Airbnb. This is how much you guys are going to have to reimburse me because the guest messed it up.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. It's so important to keep all that stuff. You know, what is it like? Keep track of everything that's happening. Like, especially receipts. How much did it cost? All that stuff. Like, especially when you're first starting out, like you really don't think of that stuff. And then when the claim comes up, you're like, I don't know how much it costs. Like, and
I don't
Airbnbs
remember.
actually right, and Airbnb's getting more specific with it, right?
They're getting so strict now, like, to the point where,
So
like,
strict.
if you can't find the receipt or the same item online, like, they're not going to reimburse you for it, or they're going to give you what they think it's worth, which is never going to be the actual value of the object, ever.
Yeah.
And I promise those videos are going to seem so tedious and annoying, especially when you go 10, 20, 30 bookings without having to use them. But when you do need them, dude, they're invaluable. There's nothing like it. There's just nothing like it. You've got to use tech to your advantage.
Yeah. Now, do you have any other advice, like, as far as like policy, Airbnb policy specifically, like,
Yes,
because they're updating all the time, and also like their review policy and stuff. Like, any advice on that?
So honestly, if we got into this, like, we need to have a whole other podcast just for policy.
We're getting another episode.
Dude, there's so many, like, little nuggets I can give you on the policy side. Let me think of what my favorite. Okay, here's a good one. This is a good one. So Airbnb's host policy says that if a guest reports that there is an issue in the home, the host has 2 hours to respond to the guest with some sort of solution before the guest can put in for a refund. So what that means is, if the AC is not working, right, before the guest can go to Airbnb and ask for a refund, they've got to call me, and they've got to give me at least 2 hours to respond and give them some sort of solution, or tangible solution on how we're going to fix this problem for them before they can go to Airbnb. But that doesn't mean that Airbnb isn't going to allow them to put that reimbursement request in before they ask you. And that also does not mean that Airbnb is going to check that all of that was followed through. So now that I know that, I had a guest one time who went straight to Airbnb and asked for a reimbursement because the AC is not working. Airbnb gave them the reimbursement. But I went back to Airbnb and I said, Airbnb, this guest never reached out to me about that. Your host policy literally says right here that they've got to let me know and give me 2 hours to figure it out. You guys never gave me that opportunity. And I got all the money back. So, like, little things like that seem so simple. I literally got the entire booking back. They seem so simple, but had I not taken the time to comb through that policy, I would have never known that, and I would have never been able to get that money back. I would have lost it.
Yeah, it's something that I actually learned from you, and I was like, they have to give you an hour, they have to give you 2 hours, something like that. And well, it actually happened to me recently, which I was really upset about, because it was a smaller booking, so it was like a 2-day booking or something like that, and it was the guest before that. This guest in particular was that guest before had a pet, right? So when we went into clean, like, I told my cleaning crew, like, yo, they had a pet, like, you have to clean like really really good. They ended up finding like a small hair, which I saw the picture was like a little hair of whatever, and then they claimed that they had allergies and all this stuff, and but they didn't message me at all. They didn't message me at all. Okay, they didn't tell me anything about this. It's like a smooth booking, like nothing happened, like no peep, not even a peep from them. And they left, they check out, and then I get this call from Airbnb. It's like, oh, you have to return this amount of money and the cleaning and all this stuff, and they put in for this thing. Now, mind you, I knew that. I was like, the hour or whatever. It's like they didn't even give me a call.
And also
so
to be, yeah, go
yeah.
ahead. No, go ahead.
But this story was like, it ended up going the wrong way for me because Airbnb ended up deciding that I still had to give them the money back because it was within a 72-hour period, and also it was like a cleanliness issue, so that was breaking their Airbnb policy. And I was like, but you didn't even give me time to fix the issue. Like, I would have went over there. Right.
Call me
Right.
next time, Kevin. Call me next time. That's not going to happen to you again, my friend.
Yeah. But it's important, like, for those of you guys who are listening, like, that's it's so important to know that policy. And yeah, like you said, Vanessa, maybe we have a whole another episode on our hands here just to talk about policies and all that stuff.
Policies, right.
Yeah. So, all right. So, we've been talking for a little bit here, and I always ask all my guests here that come on, especially if they're Airbnb, because I'm starting to get like other entrepreneur guests. But since you're in the Airbnb space, like, if you were to start from scratch, all right, knowing what you know now, how would you start your Airbnb business?
You know what? And I've been thinking about this question because I saw it on the list of questions before. Well, not a list, but I knew that was something you were going to ask me from Sean. But like,
Yeah.
I've really been thinking about it hard, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but I can, like, I don't really have, I don't have an answer. And okay,
Yeah.
I don't have an answer. I think that get plugged in. I think that's what I'm going to say. Get plugged in and get into a network of people that are doing what you want to do, because I had a really special opportunity because Sean was already so involved in real estate. I was able to step into a room with people that gave me knowledge and tools that were invaluable. And I would have never done that had I not gone out and met people. So while I can't say that like there's anything that I would change on our journey, because we really were able to really do things in the right way between the knowledge that Sean had and the knowledge that I gained from you and Natalia when I met you guys and like everybody around us.
Thank you.
I cannot think of, I don't know. I don't know, because I'm really, really happy with our progress, and I don't want to like shoot myself in the foot here, but I don't have an answer for that.
That's like a perfect answer. What are you talking about? That was like an amazing answer. That's great. Like, it's learning from other people and getting in the room with other people. That's so really so invaluable. I just
remember I always knew I didn't know a lot, but whenever I would hear Sean talking about real estate, I would just listen, and I would try to soak up everything that I could, and then I would try to talk to him about what I heard him talking about, and like make sure that I understood the concept that he was talking about. And I was so scared to go to meetups in the beginning, but like, dude, those meetups are, man, they're just the best place to be.
So powerful.
They're the best place. They're so powerful. They really are.
Yeah. No, and it's I agree. Like, it's there because you don't, and especially in real estate, like, you don't have any there's like no formal school or anything that you go to and to learn this stuff. Like, you have to, you're on your own basically. Like, you have to go, and you can pay for a mentorship course. You can pay for that, and that's why those courses are so big, because people need to learn, right? People need to learn somewhere.
Dude,
but even networking, right? Networking is another thing. Like, as long as you're in the room and you're talking to somebody, that conversation can be so much more powerful than even paying a $2,000, $3,000 course. Just one conversation.
I cannot tell you, Kev, like, how much knowledge, like, I feel like a whole new person from the experiences that I've had over the last 2 years, just getting involved in meetups and even taking these mentorship classes and stuff. Like, I have so much knowledge in my brain now that I didn't have 2 years ago. And I just like, sometimes I shock myself. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That I'm like,
Yeah.
holy shit. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
crap. Like,
No, you're
how
good.
do I know all? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
literally think to myself, holy shit. Like, how my life has changed in the last 2 years just because I've gotten involved in these like meetups.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You guys heard it here. You got to go to meetups for sure. Like even to this day, I go to meetups all the time as much as I
I'll
can.
never stop.
Never stop because that's how you keep learning and you see what other people are
And
doing
networking and
and
meeting
networking.
clients, and
Yeah,
it's the place to be.
it's the place. It's the place to be. So, any last thoughts and also, any last advice that you can give the listeners here that are just getting started, and also, um, let us know where we can find you if people want to work with you, if people want to, listen more about your story and what you guys are doing. Where can we find you and contact you?
For sure. So final thoughts are collect those guest IDs, put that Ring
Yeah.
camera on that front door, and make sure your cleaning team is taking videos. Oh, and Instagrammable spaces. Those are like
Yes.
the four top things that I would say. And
Nice.
you can find us at easybreezybnb.com, or you can book directly with us. And then you
Yes.
can also find us on our Instagram at easybreezybnb. We are just actually hired a social media person, so we're about to get
Nice.
that Instagram up and running. So please give us a follow and a like. And yeah, I hope to see some of our listeners at our Airbnbs, or maybe our next meetup. Landlords and Loggers, actually, come to Landlords
Yes.
and Loggers.
Yes. Yes. Awesome. Awesome. All right. So yeah, I'll make sure to keep put all that stuff you just said in the show notes if you guys want to follow Vanessa and Sean's journey, and also Landlord Loggers. If you guys want to meet us there, I'm always there all the time.
We're always
First,
there.
yeah, first Thursday of every month, and I'll put all the links below so you can follow her. Stick around with me, Vanessa. When we finish this, and I'll see you guys on the next episode here on the B&B Professional. I hope you like this. Thank you, Vanessa, again for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.